Hello and welcome to Aging Well with 50 Forward and Dr. Amy Price Neff from Mindstream Integrative Medicine. I'm Kelsey Mahaffey, All of Us Project Director for 50 Forward, located in Nashville, Tennessee. And with me also is Keith Richardson, our All of Us Outreach Coordinator. Keith, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, March is National Nutrition Month, so today's episode will be all about fabulous food to keep fit at 50 plus. Also, today's program is brought to you by 50 Forward, a national community engagement partner for the All of Us Research Program. All of Us is a new initiative from the National Institutes of Health to advance precision medicine. The program is seeking 1 million people from diverse backgrounds living in the United States to volunteer and share their health data, helping researchers find better treatment to cure for all of us. Over 450,000 have enrolled so far. And you can also learn more by visiting our website at joinallofus.org/50forward.
Great, thank you so much. And as always, with us today is the fabulous Dr. Amy Price Neff with Mindstream Integrative Medicine. And as usual, Dr. Neff has put together a presentation for our discussion today. So, Dr. Price Neff, welcome back and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Kelsey and Keith. And I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is eating. It's so important. And I also want to say, just imagining again about the All of Us program. You know, one of the problems we have in understanding how diet affects us as humans and in terms of our health is that carrots don't have an industry sponsor that's going to go out and research whether carrots are good for you. But entities like All of Us will actually help us understand this better. So if you haven't already signed up, please do. You're going to help us understand this better. So should I just jump right in on the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. You should be able to share your slides and take it away.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen then. And here we go. Let's see if I can get this to play. Okay, so this is a little bit of a weird picture to start a talk with, but the reason that I chose it is because this is what's growing in my backyard right now. And we can't forget that eating is something that we do in relationship with the earth. And when you stray from that, it's a good indicator that maybe you should be eating something differently. I think I'm going to have to move things around so we can see the rest of my slides. I put that bar in the wrong place. Hold on. It's one of the wild things about sharing. Go by feel.
I feel like I should recognize that plant. I've seen it and it's on the tip of my tongue.
Right, it's a trillium.
Trillium, yes.
Yeah, isn't it beautiful?
It is. That makes a beautiful wildflower.
Sorry about this. Okay, well, we're just going to move right along. Okay, so what are the goals of our conversation today? One, I think it's just important to really bring it internally that diet affects your whole everything. And one of the first indicators of a bad diet is a bad mood. Okay. And so when you feel not good, ask yourself, what am I eating? You know, am I eating for some short-term reward on the lips? You know, which I mean, I am happy to report that I am just as susceptible to, you know, vulnerable foods, right? Like foods that are going to make my mood terrible. And yet, as I grow older and wiser, I am more and more able to say, I'm sure it would taste good, but it's just not going to serve me, you know, because I aspire to greater comfort and ease within my body. And to get there means I'm going to have to choose different foods. And we'll talk a little bit about a general principle of eating for well-being, and I'll give you some specific resources. And then today we're not going to be able to do any questions and answers because this is remote, and I appreciate people being willing to roll with me there. So first, let's just ask ourselves what the purpose of eating is. And so here's some pictures of my household is sharing some meals with beloved people. So Thanksgiving, of course, the Americans, we have a big thing that day. Traveling and being in France. This is this upper right picture. We're with some friends, and then holiday baking. These are all things that mean so much to me. And again, that's one of those things we have to recognize in our food choices is cultural meanings, nostalgia, traditions, habits, all of these things. And I think that's, if we don't address that and how it feels in our body to change what we're eating, and maybe even grief around and arriving awareness that what you're eating isn't right, it's not good for you, you must change. And to change involves some pain. If we don't acknowledge that, then that basically from the get-go impairs our ability to make those changes sustainably. So you start by loving yourself into some of these food choices. All right. Now, what is this?
I don't mean to, Amy, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we still just see the slide with the Trillium on there. So we don't see the other slides.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me go back.
Just letting you know. Yes.
Let's go back to this.
Oh, now I see a clown. There we go. I think that's
so did you didn't see this? Okay, well.
Didn't see this one. This is perfect.
Gotcha. First of all, this is my brother's farm. He is a full-time farmer at Bell's Bend Farm. And this was a few years ago, and those are pepper plants going up the rows there. But this is what food looks like before you eat it. It's actually growing in dirt, and soil really matters. Soil health is going to be reflected in food quality. And when we start to do things in modern agriculture, like grow plants indoors with artificial lights, we're really naive and maybe looking just through a pinhole on the actual significance of this relationship that we have with the earth. So to the degree that you're able to eat foods that look like they maybe had 1 or 2 steps of processing since they left this soil is going to really reflect well in your own health, your own microbiome, everything that you carry with you, all those little residents of your person. So, I already spent some time talking about the cultural significance of foods. Here's Thanksgiving in a pandemic. My husband hadn't cut his hair in a long time. Our big turkey and the family baking and travel traditions that we have. And so now here we are. So the question is, what does this clown and what most people eat have in common? And the answer is they're very sad. Okay. So the standard American diet, also called the SAD diet. And, very relevantly, why is it called the SAD diet? Because when you eat the standard American diet, your risk of depression goes up radically. Okay. And there have been really interesting dietary trials with mood disorders. One famous one is called the SMILES trial. And it basically just compared people taking an antidepressant to people changing their diets in terms of treatment of depression. And there's 2 things to take home from this study. One is that changing your diet in the short term is just as effective as medication. Number 2, if you take medication, your risk of relapse is extremely high. So if you want a durable improvement in your mood, you're going to change your diet rather than take a medication. Okay. And what could be more easy and more fun than just eating well? Okay. I'm not going to say it's not effortful, because chopping vegetables, let's face it, that takes some time. But when you have an internal resistance to doing that, the first thing you want to do is smile at it, go, yeah, this is work. And the second thing you want to do is kind of acknowledge that the alternative is no longer serving you, which is why you're undertaking this new work. So what is the standard American diet? I don't begrudge the reasons that it was developed. It's highly processed, has a long shelf life. I mean, think about like the jokes I know we made in grade school about how old the Twinkie was. You know, like that Twinkie could be really old and still taste really good. And you know, and these shelf-stable products actually insulate us from hunger. So if we think about times in the past where maybe there was volatility in our markets, you know, there's a thing called the Consumer Price Index. And the Consumer Price Index is an average of what things cost. And the things on that index that don't change much are things like the price of flour, okay, or the price of a processed baked good like vanilla wafers. That price is stable. But the price of eggs and celery and milk, those are some of the most volatile products on the Consumer Price Index. And what do we have in common with those things? Well, they're all fresh, natural products. And so when you have people, for instance, right now that are suffering from the effects of inflation, you might notice that those products that are the most susceptible to inflation are the things that are actually good for us, you know, these healthier foods. So again, there's a lot of factors that go into, well, why doesn't everybody eat like the perfect mind supporting diet? Because it costs more, because it's more work, you know, and again, we want to honor the fact that these realities exist. And still we're going to like nudge up against those things because we want to eat towards our health, eat towards a better mind. You know, so what are standard American diet attributes? Generally things that taste really good, high fat, high sugar, high salt, lots of calories. You know, we are wired to seek these foods out because as humans on the planet, we've been subject to starving. And probably ancestrally, even every one of us just a few generations back has somebody that was starving in their lineage. Our genes carry that information to us and they're like, oh yes, pot of honey, please, I'll take more. You know, the other thing about foods that are like this is that they're hyper palatable, meaning you don't have a good inner kind of device that's saying, okay, you can stop eating this now. And, you know, when we did our walk with the doc on Wednesday, I mentioned the fact that there's not many people that overeat kale salad because the kale and you have a relationship where the kale doesn't want to be overeaten. And it's kind of like, hey, quit eating me after about, 10 or 20 bites. Whereas the intelligence and wisdom available in, a Papa John's pizza, something that comes from highly processed flours, from more shelf-stable cheese products and meat products. There's no wisdom in that food necessarily to say to you, you don't want a third slice. You're just probably going to eat it because the salt and the fat and the sugar and the protein and the combination presented to your brain is like, oh, yes, let's save, go into storage mode. And then the cooking techniques for a lot of these products that are hyperpalatable are high temperature, salting, curing, fried foods. And when you eat these, it results in measurable inflammation in the body. And the first symptom of that measurable inflammation is mood, typically. But it can also lead to autoimmune conditions. It can lead to cancer, it can lead to heart disease. These things are not without their consequences. And the last line there is basically just talking about how this diet is associated with the development of chronic disease. And we know as we watch other nations who are increasing their availability of foods like this, like in China and India and these developing countries, well, the rates of obesity have skyrocketed since the introduction of foods like this. So sad. This is the standard American diet. It's just very hard for the body. And so people eating it are often obviously overweight, but there's also a condition called being a TOFI, which is thin on the outside and fat on the inside. And neither of these states is very good for you. So, what is obesity? Let's just make sure we're talking about the same thing. It's basically just this physical condition where you're accumulating fat that is not helpful for your health. And obesity rates in the US have doubled since 1980. And they really just track alongside with increased consumption of sugars and processed foods. Think about, especially for those of us old enough in the 50 forward community, when you went to the hardware store in 1975, there weren't like Skittles at the checkout aisle. It was just hardware. And so one of the things is with business and marketing and strategies and like that, it's like everywhere you go, you're getting upsold a little bit. And if you're a little bit hungry and then you see that package, it's kind of hard to say no. So 40%, 46% of the US in 2010 has obesity as a medical diagnosis compared to 17% of the world globally. So US is disproportionately affected, and there's now evidence that links obesity and poor diet to the US's increased COVID death rate compared to other parts of the world. So just in terms of current relevant associations with the standard American diet and the US, this is an issue. So adipose tissue is another word for fat tissue, and it acts like a hormone producing organ. These hormones are very potent. They're meant to be kind of like puffs of air, but when you have a lot of extra adipose tissue in the body, it's going to be just cranking these hormones out continuously. And so that really contributes to the increase in risks for hormonal type cancers, breast, cervical, breast, colon, pancreatic, and prostate cancers. And then, it's the quality of the ingredients that are really implicated in these chronic illnesses. It's all really depressing. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about what eating well looks like. And again, I want to just very generously honor the fact that eating well takes effort. And if you start to change your relationship with food to being something that is meant to promote your well-being and maybe not meant to entertain you, then you might be on a better footing as far as why you're eating, what the purpose is. So general principles, one is just minimally processed. I can give the example that we think of milk as being a natural product. When you take milk and you homogenize it and skim it, and you create a substance called skim milk. People that consume that regularly have an increased risk of abdominal obesity. Okay, so we've taken something, we've created something that sounds like a good, healthy product, like skim milk. And when we put it back into people, the risk of developing more fat in a strange location, which is hormonally active, goes up. And so it's not necessarily intuitive that the foods that you come across that you think should be good are good. Processing, that's just why I use it as a general rule of thumb. If it's been processed in some way, put in a blender, homogenized, whatever, it has potential downstream effects that we don't have the power to perceive. We don't do these nutrition trials very much. You're going to get more information from vegetables in terms of plant wisdom. And I know that sounds like really hokey and naive, but I want to just kind of ask you to trust me on this, that again, beyond the powers of our modern, interpretation of diet quality, there are things in plants. Coffee has over 400 constituents in it, most of which have implications for human health. Teas, kale, you name it. And then it also depends on the soil that it was grown in. It's bringing information to you. So we don't necessarily make in our bodies everything that we need to get from our food. And that's why we have certain things we know we need to eat. We need to eat protein. We need to eat fat. We need to eat carbohydrates. But it goes beyond those macro categories. You want to eat fats from high quality sources. So we've all heard this, olive oil, grass-fed butters and coconut oils aren't for everybody. I say that's kind of a general thing. Olive oil is kind of a safe fat for everybody. And then these other things, depending on your current health situation, you might want to modulate. But what's definitely not good for you is things like the vegetable oil. It's just like a liquid in a container, that you can get from the store. Those tend to be really high in inflammatory fats. And yet that's like what we've all like grown up using, So this requires pivoting, like in the aisles of the grocery store. You just gotta kind of move on. Minimize sugar. So what does that actually mean? The American Heart Association says no more than 24 grams of added sugar per day. Okay, so that's less than one Coke. A yogurt that's sugar sweetened, like a Dannon yogurt, has about that much sugar in it. One yogurt. And so it's pretty easy to bust your daily allotment of added sugars. So just start reading labels, and as you kind of internalize this, you might go, ooh, I probably don't want that, And then fish is really good for you. Whole grains and beans have tons of fiber. Fibers is good for you as a blood pressure medication in terms of lowering your blood pressure. So try to get the fiber in. And then regular consumption of whole grains, fruits like apples, blueberries, and raw nuts. There was a dietary trial also that looked at stroke risk and heart disease risk. And they gave people, the constituents in the trial, they gave them a couple of liters of olive oil a month. And some of these people were assigned to a group where they're eating 2 cups of raw nuts a week. And the risk of heart disease was so much lower in those people getting the olive oil and the raw nuts that they stopped the trial early. And so just, and no medication in any way approximates the effect of this dietary trial on the lowering of heart disease risk. So when you go to the doctor, don't get under the illusion that all you need to do is just take your medicine. That's just not fair to your little body. So this is what a box of food looks like that's like really going to honor your body, mind, spirit. And if the idea of eating this food is kind of like, then my invitation to you is one bite at a time, right? Without a lot of pressure on yourself. How can I transition what I eat from what I'm eating now that I know isn't good for me to something that looks a little bit more like this? Is it that you've never grown up eating this kind of thing and that to taste a radish on your lips is like, well, like ease up. These probably look familiar to you: the Mediterranean diet, the anti-inflammatory diet, and the DASH diet. What you'll notice with each of them is that vegetables and whole grains form the basis of each of these. And whichever one appeals to you, I guarantee you, if you're not already doing it, will be an improvement on what you're eating now. What you don't see on there is Chick-fil-A. You don't see McDonald's, Key. And there's a reason for that. And that's because no matter what, those businesses are in the business of making money, and anywhere that they can cut costs, they're going to. So the deep fryer oil is not olive oil. The grains are not whole grains. They're highly processed. And fruits and vegetables are expensive. So you're not going to be getting those things there. Or if you do, it's going to be in a tiny dose compared to the animal proteins and the sugars. These are some great options as far as what you should be eating. What the heck should I eat? And Kelsey, I can send you the slides. These all have links to them. So What the Heck Should I Eat is a great and very cheeky book by a guy named Mark Hyman, who I think is really a great voice in all of this. The Clean Eating Kitchen is just a fantastic resource for recipes. More locally, the Nashville Food Project, while they don't teach cooking classes, they do have a ton of resources and very well-made foods for people that are food insecure. And if you're food insecure, that's a great place to kind of check out. And if you're not, it's a great place to volunteer. I love Layla Ali, and she wrote an amazing book called Food for Life. So if you're trying to transition from familiar foods that maybe aren't as good for you, there's her book. There's several other books like that are just, traditional cooking methods, but taken to the next level that promotes your health. And then even Nashville native Louisa Shafia wrote a Persian cookbook that is fantastic. Can't recommend that one enough. And then finally, we got to give each other moral support in order to accomplish our goals. And so morals are mushrooms that you can find here in Nashville. And morals include our values that we share that are virtuous and uplifting. So let's have high morals. Nobody's going to hate that. Let's see. Did I stop my share?
Yes, that was fantastic. That was just fabulous. I would love those slides so we can have those and share those with any of our viewers that might be interested, especially with those resources that you listed, those books. That's wonderful. And I love that you mentioned the Nashville Food Project. They're one of our partners with 50 Forward. They prepare our meals for 50 Forward Fresh. We transitioned over to using them and in order to provide high quality and fresher ingredients in our meals that we deliver. So fantastic. Very, very happy that you mentioned them. What about you, Keith? What did you learn? What are you going to start eating? We're bantering with Keith over his McDonald's breakfast from the other day.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. So Dr. Neff definitely called me out about eating unhealthy. So I'm going to try to scale back on the McDonald's, but definitely more salad, more greens, more grain and whole grain. I would love to add to my diet because I think that's so important to have a definitely diverse palate.
It's hard, especially when you're trying to eat on the run. We still have to solve that. Like, how do you eat conveniently in a way that affirms your health? We got to figure that out.
Awesome. Well, also for those who are in Nashville, I want to also plug in a great opportunity to get fit by exercising with us and others. Our monthly Walk with the Doc event, Dr. Price Neff. Would you like to tell us about that?
I would
how
love
the viewers
to.
can get involved? Yeah.
Yes. So March was our 5th Walk with a Doc. We started our chapter in November. Yes. And what we do is gather on the second Wednesday of every month at 11 o'clock at the old dance hall pavilion. Is that right? At Centennial Park. So not basically very close to the Parthenon. There is a picnic shelter, and if you just park right by the picnic shelter, you can launch on a walk with us that takes about an hour. And our karma is so good that every walk we have beautiful weather, and I'm knocking on my computer as a surrogate for wood because I believe that what we're doing is so important for Nashville that God is shining his light on us to let us walk in peace. And we just enjoy a casual walk. There are fast walkers and slow walkers and walkers of all stripes and ages. And we talk to one another, and anybody that has questions and just, especially health related questions, and you just want to have a casual chat with the doc, you can do that. So come one, come all. We can't wait to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much for plugging that, Keith. And our next walk, for those of you that are in Nashville, is going to be Wednesday, April 13th at 11 a.m., meeting at that Centennial Park event shelter. So please come on out, Nashville, and walk with us for Walk with the Doc with Dr. Amy Price Neff. And I think that is it for our time today. This has just been so fabulous. I think this is one of my favorites so far. I can feel your passion, Dr. Price Neff, with the nutrition. I know this is one of your favorite subjects. So we might have to put together a cooking class, something like that would be fabulous.
I am in.
Yeah,
I'm in. I'll hand out the knives.
Okay, great. We will plan that. We'll all chop together. All right. Well, once again, thank you for Keith and Dr. Price Neff for being with us today. Thank you to all of our viewers watching on Facebook. If you would like to learn more about the All of Us Research Program, please visit our website at www.joinallofus.org/50forward, and we'll drop that in our comment section as well on Facebook. And just join us if it speaks to you. You can become 1 in a million. We're almost to that 500,000 mark. So super, super exciting. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you for the next Aging Well in April. Bye-bye.